Imagine a threat lurking on your computer, a malicious presence, but it exists without ever writing a single file to your hard drive. How do you even begin to fight something you can't really see? Something that seems to just, vanish the moment you reboot your machine. Welcome to a deep dive into the elusive, almost sci-fi world of fileless malware. This isn't your average virus that downloads a file. No, this is a far more sophisticated and stealthy kind of cyber attack. Our mission today is to unpack exactly what fileless malware is, how it pulls off its magic by living off the land within your system, and importantly, why it's so incredibly difficult to detect, and what strategies you can actually use to protect yourself from these, well, invisible threats. We've pulled together a stack of sources to give you a truly comprehensive understanding. We're going to give you the essential nuggets of knowledge so you can be well informed about a critical, evolving threat in cybersecurity. Hopefully, we'll give you those aha moments without too much overload. Okay, let's unpack this then. What exactly does fileless mean in the context of malware? I mean, how can something malicious exist without an actual file? It sounds almost like a ghost in the machine.
It really does feel like that sometimes. And what's fascinating here is how it leverages what's already present on the system. So fileless malware is basically malicious software that operates entirely within a computer's memory, the RAM. That means it doesn't create any files on the hard drive.
Right, unlike traditional malware.
Exactly. Traditional stuff usually needs a file downloaded, installed. This is different. Fileless malware exploits native, legitimate tools already built into your system to execute its attack.
Okay.
And that makes it inherently harder to detect and remove because there are simply no files for traditional antivirus software to scan. It's like trying to catch smoke, really.
So it uses the computer's own tool.
Precisely. This technique is often called living off the land or Lotto L.
Yeah.
And the aha moment here is crucial. Instead of bringing their own weapons, attackers are turning your own trusted system tools against you.
Like what kind of tools?
Things like PowerShell, Windows Management Instrumentation, WMI, and various scripting languages. These tools are often signed by Microsoft or trusted, so the malware can often bypass conventional security defenses, like signature-based antivirus.
Because the tool itself isn't malicious, just how it's being used.
You got it. And fileless malware is also much more lightweight. The malicious code can be loaded directly into memory or even subtly placed within the Windows registry, then executed from there. For instance, you might have a PowerShell script loaded into a server's memory, and it just starts sending sensitive data directly to an attacker's server. No file needed.
Wow. That must be a nightmare for forensics.
Oh, it's a major challenge. Digital forensic investigators usually rely on those digital artifacts, those files left behind, to piece together what happened. With fileless, those artifacts might just not be there.
So if there's no file being downloaded in the usual sense, how do these invisible threats even get onto a system in the first place? How does that initial attack get triggered?
Well, they're often delivered through very common ways, things you're probably already wary of, like phishing emails or malicious websites, maybe compromised software updates. The trick is an unsuspecting user might click a seemingly harmless link or open a document, maybe a Word doc or PDF, with a malicious macro hidden inside.
The macros.
Yeah. And that macro then triggers the attack to unfold without downloading a visible file. It all happens silently in the background, often loading straight into memory.
That's incredibly sneaky. But okay, if it doesn't write to disk, how does it stick around? Does it just vanish after a reboot? Or can it persist?
That's a great question, and it leads to persistence mechanisms. Despite not writing files to disk in the traditional way, fileless malware can establish persistence.
How?
By embedding itself in legitimate system processes, or, more commonly, by modifying Windows registry keys.
Like the auto-run keys.
Exactly, like those auto-run keys that tell your computer what programs to launch on startup, or they might set up scheduled tasks. This ensures the malware gets re-executed when the system starts up or a user logs in, even without leaving a permanent file on the hard drive. It essentially carves out a little recurring spot for itself in your system's active processes or configuration.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. Let's try and trace the journey of a typical fileless attack, step by step. From that initial breach, what's the very first domino to fall?
Right, the initial compromise. It often starts, as we said, with something like a phishing email, a malicious link, maybe an attachment. You click that link, you could be redirected to a fraudulent website. That site might exploit vulnerabilities in, say, your browser, or maybe Java, or Flash if it's still around.
Or an exploit kit could just automate that.
Exactly. Exploit kits can automate this whole process, scanning for known software flaws and launching the attack. So picture this. A user opens a malicious Word document. Instead of downloading an obvious .exe file, a macro inside that document triggers PowerShell scripts, and those scripts download and execute directly into memory. No physical file lands on the disk, just code running.
So once that initial, almost invisible foothold is established in memory, what's the attacker's next move? Where does the fileless part really kick in hard?
Okay, once that first step is taken, the attacker typically injects the malicious code directly into the memory space of a legitimate process that's already running.
Ah, hiding inside something trusted.
Precisely. And they often do this using those trusted system tools we mentioned. PowerShell is a big one, WMI, or scripting engines like VBScript, JScript. PowerShell is a favorite because it's so powerful. It can download and execute scripts directly in memory without ever touching the disk.
Making it nearly invisible to traditional AV.
Almost completely invisible to file scanning AV. Yeah. And remember persistence. To make sure they stick around, attackers might write snippets of malicious code into the Windows registry.
Right, the auto-run keys again.
Or other registry locations.
Yeah.
That ensures the malware re-executes after a system reboot, even though no actual files were written to the disk storage. It's a really ingenious way to stay hidden.
After they're inside and running in memory, do they just sit there quietly? Or do they try to, spread out?
Oh, they definitely don't just sit there. From that initial foothold, the attacker almost always looks for ways to move laterally across the network.
Okay.
And they try for privilege escalation, trying to get administrative control.
How do they do that without files?
Again, using built-in tools. Utilities like PSExec or SC, which is service control. These are tools legitimate sysadmins use all the time to manage remote systems.
So they're blending in again.
Exactly. They might use a credential dumping tool, maybe something like Mimikatz, to pull passwords and hashes straight out of memory. Yeah. And those credentials then let them access other machines, more sensitive systems. It's like finding the master key once they're inside the house.
And once they have that broader access, what's the end game? What are they actually trying to steal or achieve?
That brings us to data exfiltration and command and control, or C2 communication. The malware needs to talk back to its operator, right? It communicates with a remote C2 server to get instructions, or more often, to send stolen data out.
And how do they hide that traffic?
Well, this communication is frequently encrypted, and it's also disguised as legitimate network traffic to avoid detection by network security tools.
Sneaky.
Very. They might use techniques like DNS tunneling, hiding data in DNS requests, or just plain old HTTP requests that look normal, but are actually carrying stolen data off to the attacker's server, silently slipping out.
You mentioned evasion earlier. How do they keep this whole operation hidden and make sure they stick around, especially if it's all just in memory? Seems fragile.
It can be, but they have tricks. Fileless malware uses advanced evasion techniques precisely because it leaves no files on disk.
Yeah.
That bypasses a lot of endpoint protection platforms and, as we said, traditional forensic tools. Some attackers even use polymorphic or metamorphic techniques, meaning the malware constantly changes its own code structure with each execution, almost like a chameleon. Makes signature-based detection even harder.
Wow.
And for persistence, they rely heavily on those registry keys we talked about, or scheduled tasks, or maybe WMI event subscriptions, things that trigger the code to run again automatically.
Even after a reboot?
Even after a reboot, if they set it up right. Although some purely memory-resident malware can be wiped clean on reboot, leaving almost no trace for forensic analysis. That's why these are sometimes called advanced volatile threats, or AVTs. They're powerful, but potentially fleeting.
And the ultimate impact, what's the damage when these attacks actually succeed?
It varies hugely. It could be massive data theft, like we saw in some big breaches, or it could be deploying ransomware, or even outright sabotage of systems. Think about notable incidents like the 2017 Equifax breach. Fileless techniques were reportedly used there to exfiltrate incredibly sensitive data, and it left very little traditional forensic evidence behind.
Right.
There are even fileless ransomware variants now. They encrypt your data directly in memory and demand a ransom for decryption without ever writing the encryption key to the disk. That adds a whole other layer of complexity for recovery efforts.
So this fileless idea, it sounds very modern, very cutting edge. Is it actually new?
You know, looking at the bigger picture, fileless malware isn't entirely new. Its roots actually stretch back decades. It shows a clear evolution in stealth.
Really? Decades?
Yeah, the earliest roots, you could argue, are in the 1980s with things like terminate and stay resident programs, TSRs, early examples of code just sitting in memory. Then these techniques evolved. Think of network worms like Code Red back in 2001.
Oh, I remember Coder.
Right. It infected, 350,000 servers? By exploiting a buffer overflow in Microsoft's web server software, a very early large-scale memory-resident attack. And the sophistication just kept growing. Modern precursors like Stuxnet, the industrial control system worm, that's the one. Around 2010, highly advanced targeted SCADA systems, and it definitely used fileless techniques to operate stealthily and evade detection. So you see this steady refinement from basic memory residence to these highly sophisticated, living off the land attacks we see today. It's really a progression.
Okay, so what does all this mean for our security today? Why do these invisible threats pose such a huge challenge for our existing defenses, especially when we have so much advanced tech now?
That really is the core problem, isn't it? The aha moment for defenders here is realizing that these attacks are designed specifically to evade traditional defenses.
Yeah.
First, they bypass file-based and signature-based detection precisely because there are no files or static signatures to find.
Okay, makes sense.
Second, and this is maybe more deceptive, they use those trusted system tools, PowerShell, WMI, Office macros, tools that are supposed to be there, supposed to be running.
Right.
This makes it incredibly hard to distinguish between legitimate system activity and malicious behavior just by looking at the process name.
Yeah, PowerShell running isn't necessarily bad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And finally, many fileless malware variants are non-persistent, or at least their initial stages are.
Right.
The malicious code might be removed when the system reboots. That makes it really difficult to gather forensic evidence after an attack has happened. The trail goes cold fast.
This raises a really important question then. What can we actually do when the enemy is literally invisible? It sounds like traditional defenses are, well, struggling.
They are in many ways, and it calls for a fundamental shift in mindset, really.
Yeah.
Organizations need a proactive, layered security approach that goes way beyond just scanning files.
So what does that look like?
It includes things like application whitelisting, only allowing specifically approved software to run. Enforcing the principle of least privilege, so even if code executes, it doesn't have admin rights unless absolutely necessary. Diligently applying security patches and updates, that's still crucial. And deploying advanced endpoint detection and response, or EDR solutions. Plus, using behavioral analysis and machine learning.
Behavioral analysis to spot weird activity.
Exactly, to identify deviations from standard activity patterns, even if the tool being used is legitimate.
So it's less about looking for a known bad file and more about spotting unusual behavior. That sounds like a game changer.
You've hit the nail right on the head.
Yeah.
That shift in focus is absolutely critical. Key detection techniques now really lean on behavioral analysis and something called indicators of attack, or IOAs.
IOAs, not IOCs.
Right. Indicators of compromise, IOCs, usually rely on known malicious files, hashes, IP addresses. IOAs focus on the actions the attacker's taking. Behavioral analysis looks for suspicious patterns. PowerShell running with weird command line parameters, unexpected processes talking to each other, abnormal interactions between programs in the OS. IOAs try to detect the intent behind an attack sequence, even if no known malicious file is present yet. It's about predicting the attacker's next move based on their actions, not just cleaning up what they left behind.
What other specific methods can defenders use then to try and uncover these hidden operations?
Well, memory analysis is crucial. Tools for memory forensics can sometimes find evidence of fileless malware, malicious scripts, injected code, even if it's only living in RAM.
Right.
Then there's system call monitoring and real-time detection, watching for unusual or unauthorized interactions between processes and the operating system itself. For example, tools like Sysdig Secure monitor deep down at the system's core. They can spot strange interactions, even advanced tricks like using special memory areas to execute code without writing to disk.
Okay, that sounds powerful.
It is. And event tracing, command line monitoring, also vital. Just watching the parameters passed to processes like PowerShell can be revealing. If PowerShell suddenly runs with unusual or super complex arguments, that's a potential red flag.
Makes sense.
And for persistence, regularly scanning critical system areas like the registry is essential. Many modern security suites, like say Kaspersky Labs' multi-layered protection, include capabilities to monitor the registry for suspicious changes.
Gotcha.
And finally, you can't discount human expertise. Threat hunting and managed services. This involves security analysts proactively searching for subtle signs of activity, maybe stolen credentials being used, or odd commands being run via legitimate accounts, stuff that automated tech might miss.
And are there specific types of tools or overall approaches that really stand out in this fight against fileless threats?
Definitely. There are EDR solutions, like Bitdefender EDR, that provide comprehensive monitoring and analytics, specifically geared towards behavioral anomalies. Malwarebytes EDR and their exploit protection focus on blocking fileless attacks by monitoring application behavior and reinforcing memory protection.
Okay.
Applying zero trust principles is also huge.
Never trust, always verify.
Exactly. Assume breach, verify everything, and mapping observed techniques to frameworks like the IPIRE ATT and CK matrix helps organizations understand how they're being attacked and build better defenses.
Right. Context is key.
Absolutely. And for Linux systems, there's even research into things like a check on execution or COE kernel-based approach. The idea is to pause code execution briefly, analyze it, maybe check it against VirusTotal before letting it run fully.
Interesting.
And of course, you can't forget the basics. Regular staff training on phishing, using password managers. The human element is still often the first point of entry, file or no file.
Okay, we've talked a lot about the theory, the defense strategies. But let's make this really real. These attacks aren't just hypothetical, right? They've hit major organizations, even governments. Can you give us a few truly impactful examples?
Absolutely. It's important to see the real-world impact. One notable individual case is Powlix. Remember that one?
Vaguely from 2014.
That's it. A fileless Trojan. It famously exploited Microsoft Word via phishing emails, then used JavaScript and PowerShell mainly for persistence in the registry. It was incredibly stealthy for its time and could survive reboots without a traditional file. The insight there is how early attackers latched onto the registry's power for fileless persistence.
Okay, registry persistence. Got it. What about bigger incidents?
For wider, more destructive impact, you have to look at the 2021 ransomware attack on Ireland's health service executive, the HSE.
Oh yeah, that was huge.
Massive. Carried out by the Conti ransomware group, initial access. A phishing email with a malicious Excel macro. Classic start. But from there, they used living off the land techniques, employing tools like Cobalt Strike for 8 weeks, moving laterally across the network, totally undetected.
8 weeks.
8 weeks before they finally deployed the ransomware. And it wasn't just about encrypting files. They exfiltrated 700 gigabytes of sensitive patient data and completely shut down the national IT network. It crippled the Irish health system.
That's devastating.
It really shows the potential. And the same Conti group used similar fileless techniques in the 2022 attack on the Costa Rican government.
I remember reading about that too.
Crippled government systems, including tax collection, forced them to declare a national emergency. These incidents really underscore the nation-state level impact these fileless techniques can facilitate.
It's a stark reminder of the real-world consequences then. Goes way beyond just one infected computer.
Indeed. Just for a more current perspective on prevalence, Arctic Wolf, the security company, recently reported observing a staggering 2,000% increase in detections of the WinZ.32 Trojan
2,000%.
over a 12-month period across their customer base.
Yeah.
And WinZ.32 is a fileless info stealer.
So stealing data without leaving files.
Exactly. It just highlights the growing and very real prevalence of these fileless threats in enterprise environments today.
Yeah.
It's absolutely not just a theoretical threat. It's a rapidly expanding reality for defenders.
Wow. Okay, we've really taken a deep dive into fileless malware today. It's a truly insidious and clearly evolving threat. It seems obvious that the whole landscape of cybersecurity is constantly shifting, moving way beyond simple file scans into this more sophisticated battle of wits.
It really does. And it underscores the importance of, well, not just reactive defense, but proactive monitoring. Understanding the behavior of systems, not just looking for the presence of known bad files. Knowledge, in this context, really is your first line of defense. The game has truly changed from looking for static signatures to actively hunting for dynamic, suspicious actions.
So here's something to think about. If the most dangerous threats can operate entirely invisibly, exploiting the very tools that are designed to help us run our systems, what does this mean for our fundamental trust in digital systems? And maybe deeper, how will it reshape our understanding of digital privacy in a world where critical data traces can potentially be made to disappear upon just a simple reboot? It's definitely something to keep thinking about. We encourage you to keep learning and stay vigilant in this really fascinating and clearly critical area of cybersecurity.